G'day everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm working on the Bakkie again, and this time I'm working on this chassis rail because back in South Africa it looks like this is where they were jacking the car up, and all along this rail it's been pushed in and it's dented all the way along. So what I'm going to end up doing is cutting the cap off, hammering all the dents out and welding it back on. But depending on what it's like in there and if I can hammer the dents out well enough, I'll reuse this. But if it's really bad, then I'll have to get another bit of sheet metal and make a new cap up. I've done this top rail. That was nowhere near as bad as this one, and that one's come out quite well. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better than what it was. This one is going to be interesting because it is pretty bad. Luckily it hasn't actually damaged the sides, so that's one of the good things. And I ended up just doing this out of scrap metal, and I found a part of the chassis that wasn't damaged, and I cut that. That is the width of the chassis, so this should fit over it, and that will show me pretty much if the chassis is sort of bent out, because as it's dented it may have pushed the sides out, which it has. Unlike up here, I can fit that and put that all the way along because I've done that one, and I made sure everything is in and fine. But all the way along here, that's how bad it is until it gets to here, because there's no damage here. So it's a matter of all the way along here, because it's been dented in, it's sort of pushed the outsides out. So once I've cut this top off, then I'll go along the whole rail and bring the edges in. And then from there, after hammering this in, or all the dents out, if it looks all right to reuse, I will. If not, as I said, I'll get some more sheet metal, I'll make a new cap up, pretty much to suit what's being cut out. So yeah, that's where I'm at the moment, and I'll go along and show you. All right, first part of doing this is I've got to mark right down the edge, probably about 5 to 7 mil in, roughly, all the way down, because that's where I'm going to cut, and then find out where the dents start, and then just before it, that's how I'm going to cut it across. So I'll do that just roughly with my hands. I'm going to mark it all along the edge. There's a big dent there. All the way down to about there, because that's where it's all good. And now I'll do the same on the other side. So I'll find where it's all good, which is about there, and I mark my line across. So that's where I'm going to be cutting. And I'll do the same back here, right about there. So now that's all my marks where I'm going to be cutting the cap off. So I'll do that now. So there you go. That's not too bad. Bit of surface rust. You wouldn't believe this. Alright, so that's the inside of the cap. Yes, there is surface rust, but nothing major. And that is inside. So it's actually pretty good. But, surprise, surprise, guess what's in it? A spanner! I would never have expected that. Can't quite make out what size that is. But there you go. I've just been over it with a light sander, and it's actually come up even better now. And the surface rust is, or what it was, just surface rust, except down here the rust was a bit heavier and pitted. I wanted to grind as much of this surface rust off as possible, so when I'm hammering the dents out, I'm not hammering dirt or stones into the metal. So that'll be my next thing to do. Hammer all these dents out and see how it comes out. Okay, that, after a little bit of a hammering, has actually come up a lot better. Don't know if you can actually pick it up on the camera. Probably not, but that has actually come up quite well. I reckon I will be able to use this again. There's just a few small dents that I can feel that I'll just try knocking out. But that has actually come up better than I expected. Now, as I said, it's not going to be perfect because it has been dented so badly, but for what the car is going to be used for, it's not a show car. I will be putting in to shows though, but it doesn't have to be perfect. I want to drive it, not just show it. I'd be happy to re-weld that back onto the chassis. That's going to save me some money. I don't have to get any more sheet metal, and I'm using the original factory stuff. So yeah, I'm happy with that. All right, so now we are going to check the width of the chassis rail using this. And what I'm going to do is I've got it on there and I'll slowly slide it back like that, and every time it stops I'll just get my little light, shine it in the back, and I'll be able to see exactly where it needs to come in, whether it's one side or both. In this case, only this side needs to go in a bit. That side's okay. So we'll keep going with that. So now I've got the rail the right width where it should be. Now I can adjust the cap to suit this. So it's a matter of now I've got to make sure I leave a bit of a gap in between the cap and the outside of the rails, so at least the weld can get into it instead of just welding on top of it. So now I've done that, I'll start looking at really giving the inside as much of a clean as I can, and I'll use some rust inhibitor, not necessarily in all of it, but in some spots, and then I can put the rust protection paint over that. Getting there. Well, that's the first coat done. I'll leave it 24 hours for this to dry. Then I'll do another coat tomorrow. Bit hard to tell down the bottom there, but usually you know it's working when the metal starts turning purple. So that is all inside. Totally painted except for there, but there's a reason I haven't done them there, but I've tried to get as much into the chassis rail as possible. So yeah, first coat, and I'll do the second coat tomorrow. At this stage, what I've done off camera is I've done a second coat of rust inhibitor and one decent thick coat of metal protector, just black paint. So all inside there is protected now, and the inside of the rail cap, same thing with that. I've also ground the edges, and I've even put a little bit of a V-groove in there, so that's all ready for welding. And I've also done the same thing with the cap. There are 3 factory holes in this top for water drainage. So I've just made these plates up, screwed them in, so it's easier for that to sit level on top of the rail. Therefore I've got them, then I can use my magnets for the rest of the way if need be. And I've also gone along the edges and just ground the actual cap so it all sits inside the rail. So pretty much now I'm at the stage I'm ready to start tacking it in. And what I'll do there is I'll start from this end, and I'll get these corners level and tacked in, and then I'll slowly go an inch in, get these level, tack them in, and just keep going like that all the way across, inch at a time, getting it level, tacking it in. And then once that's all tacked in, now I can start doing full welds and weld it up. So that is the top all tack welded on. Well, there you go. All welded up. Now it's a matter of grinding it all back, and more than likely there will be spots that I will have to touch up with a welder, but almost done. There you go. Pretty much all ground down. I've gone over it with a sanding disc so it's flat, or flat disc, and it's not perfect as I said, but that is so much better than what it was. And yes, after going over it with the flat sanding disc, you can see some low points, well, probably a lot of low points, but they're not low to really worry about. So now all I'll do is I'll put I'll give it a good wipe over and give it a coat of paint to seal it. So that is now both rails repaired, and a coat of paint just to seal the metal, but the paint sort of shows up all the little low spots. But as I said, compared to what it was, that is fantastic. I'm really happy about that now. So next thing, tidy up and then move on to the next bit.